Hey gang, so yesterday I talked about music, and I wanted to just really quickly before I jump into today's topic, I wanted to thank you guys for some of the comments that I got yesterday talking about the music. I talked about Connie Converse and Nick Drake and Robert Johnson. You guys had some really great feedback on all of those things. I talked about this anthology compilation of American folk music by Harry Smith that I got as a present, and somebody in the comments, and I'm sorry I don't have your name in front of me, but you pointed out like what a big deal this collection was because all the songs were so old and they didn't keep track of copyrights very well back then, and it was a lot of like legal stuff, and the only way that they could get all this together, like Harry Smith put all this together way back in the day, but he didn't have rights to the music, basically is what it came down to. But the Smithsonian Institute had to actually get involved and have a whole army of lawyers to actually get this together to basically preserve it for, cultural significance, which I didn't even know that was that big of a deal. I just thought it was a really cool thing that I had. Turns out it's a really cool thing that I had, and your comment made me realize that, and I appreciate it very much. Anyway, so yesterday I talked about music. I thought today I would talk about books real quick because I finished a book last week. I actually don't read nearly as much as I should, or probably as much as you guys think I do. I'm always so busy, working on scripts, and I do a lot of research online and stuff, so I'm reading all the time. I'm just not reading books. I want to be better about that. Something I kind of started last week, I get on these little kicks to develop habits, to really work on building habits on things. I'm trying to read just 20 pages a day on a book. That's doable to just sit down and read. And what I used to always do was I'll read a book at the end of the day when I go to bed. Well, the problem is I work until 1 or 2 in the morning. I basically work on stuff until I'm just can't keep my eyes open anymore. And the problem with reading when you can't keep your eyes open is you need your eyes open to read. So that doesn't work out very well. What I've actually started doing this week is just making sure that I read before I actually do my work. So I get up in the morning, I do a little meditation thing. I shouldn't even call it meditation because regular meditation, you try to clear your mind, and I try to keep pulling my mind back to clarity, but at the same time I keep a notebook with me, like all the stuff that I've written down. I basically just sit there with a notebook and a coffee, and I sit there for 20 minutes. I keep a timer, and I close my eyes, and I just try to quiet my mind, but obviously the stuff that's going to keep on coming up, I just kind of write it down as sort of a labeling technique. That's a whole different video. I got off on a tangent, sorry. But that's something I try to do in the morning now, and I follow that up by reading 20 pages from whatever book that I'm reading. So I get it out of my way, develop that habit, and then I can work on whatever for the rest of the day. Well, the book I finished last week is Artemis from Andy Weir. And I've had this book for way too long. It took me way too long to get around to it, but I finally did. Really enjoyed it. The Martian, which was also by Andy Weir, that is probably it is definitely the first, maybe the only book that I've actually read before I saw the movie. That book came out, it's super nerdy. I'm sure many of you have read it. So many people, personal friends were like, you gotta read this book, it's great. So I got it, and the only time I ever really, wow, that was my hands, sit down and do a lot of reading is when I'm on some kind of vacation. And I think I got that book, my family got together for this whole thing out in California, and I went out there, and I think I read the whole book over that trip. In fact, if you're familiar with The Martian, it's got this really high tension ending with him launching off of the surface of Mars to try to reconnect with the spaceship, and it's a whole million different things could go wrong. It's very tense. Anyway, I was actually reading the climax of the book as my plane was landing, and it was going through a lot of turbulence, so it was like that extra bit of so that was an interesting experience reading that. Anyway, I really liked The Martian. I did a whole video about it on my channel back when the movie came out. I did the book versus the movie thing. And I knew about Artemis, and so I bought it, and I've had it forever. And then I felt the extra need to get around to reading it when, I know this is going to sound really braggy, but I don't care. This is a big deal. Andy Weir shouted me out on Twitter. I don't know if some of you on Twitter may have seen it, but I totally lost my mind. No, I used to have The Martian up on the shelf over here, and he posted on Twitter, and he said he'd been binge watching my channel and just noticed that The Martian was in the shelf behind him, or behind me, and I was like, what? So I kind of had a little quick back and forth with him. I didn't want to like nerd out or fangirl too much with him, but no, that was huge. I was like, oh my god, are you kidding me? Andy Weir's watching my channel. So knowing that Artemis was like right off screen over here on the shelf, it was like, okay, I've got to read this thing now. I really liked it. He always goes really deep into chemistry, and I'm kind of curious because I know he has like a software engineer background, but both The Martian and Artemis had very major plot points based around chemistry. Like, he made fuel from the environment. No, I'm sorry. He made oxygen from the fuel in Martian, and in this one, not to spoil anything, but an explosion winds up creating chloroform and knocking out a whole bunch of people. And that was a big pivotal moment in the book. Anyway, I will say my wife is a very literate person. She has a master's degree in English Lit. So she's very like literature, right? And she's not sci-fi at all. And she had read Artemis. It wasn't her favorite book, but I liked it. And I think it'll make a great movie. I know they're working on a film right now. The guy who did, the Lego movie. The guys who did the Lego movie are doing Artemis. And I think it's got a lot of great set pieces that are going to look really good on film, especially with the use of the moon's gravity. If they can get that right, because in 1/6 gravity you can jump really far, you can jump from high levels. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do in the moon gravity that you can't do on Earth's gravity. There's depictions in the book of this the main character running down a hallway and scaling the walls as she's running because the gravity is so weak. That's going to be really cool in a movie. And it's all based on real physics, and that's kind of one of the highlights of what Andy Weir does. So I'm a fan. I'm even more of a fan than he's a fan. But I recommend the book if you haven't read it. It's all about a heist gone wrong on a lunar colony, a moon base, or the first city on the moon that's called Artemis. Anyway, a lot of interesting stuff in there. So I finished that last week. I moved on to another book. Again, a book that I've had sitting over here on the shelf for a better part of a year, and on a subject that I've been asked to cover a million times, and I never wanted to cover it on the channel until I read the book, because I knew there was a book that was all kind of based on. And the book is, some of you are going to groan, some of you are going to scream, it's Biocentrism. There we go. It's a big shiny thing. No, it's Biocentrism by Robert Lanza. I'm only about halfway through, as you can see right there. But it's interesting so far. I mean, I was familiar with the concept of it. It seems to sort of come down to a lot of taking quantum weirdness like the double slit experiment and those kinds of things, the observer effect, and implying basically that things don't exist until a consciousness perceives and observes them. And it's sort of another way of looking at reality. Like I said, I'm only halfway through, so I don't want to pass too much judgment. I'm doing one of these with it so far. I'm kind of like, okay, interesting, but I'll let him make his whole argument before I do a video on it. I'll definitely cover it later on, but we'll see how that goes. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting so far. After that, I don't know. I would like to be able to switch back and forth between narrative and nonfiction books. And I don't know what a new narrative book might be. I think I've read all those. But my wife, again, she has stacks of books all over the house. So I am never in want of books to read around here. So I would like to go back and read something a little bit more classical. But I always want to learn. I want to learn things when I read books. I don't read for fun that much. And maybe that's why I don't do it as much as I should. But anyway. That's it. I'm going to keep this one fairly short. I just wanted to kind of share that with you guys. I do recommend Artemis. I would love to hear your thoughts if you read it. If you've read Biocentrism, if you got any ideas for books, I'm up for it. God knows when I'll get around to it. But yesterday was music. Today was books. I will leave it at that. If you haven't caught it, today's video is kind of a superhuman abilities video. It's doing okay. I found out one of them was a fraud, which didn't surprise me, but anyway. All right, I'll leave you with that. You guys have a good one. Thanks a lot. Catch you later.